Okay, so welcome to week 2 of the course. I probably should be telling you this story next week when we get into depth about poetry and talking about poetry. But whenever I teach literature, I love to tell my students this story. So it kind of makes me sound old. I'm really not that old, I promise. But I had a professor when I was in college who was friends with Robert Frost. Now, if you don't know who Robert Frost is, we're going to be reading one of his poems next week. But he probably is one of the most, if not the most important American poet. I mean, it's hard to, Walt Whitman, forget that, but he's huge. He's really important as a poet. Hard to overstate how influential and important he was. And my professor was a very young woman. He was older, but they were good friends. And one day, um, they decided that they wanted to go to a conference together. So, in an academic conference, especially on literature, what happens is students, professors, they present their work to each other, analyzing literature, talking about it, discussing in kind of a formal way what it means. They're lots of fun. I hope you get to go to one day. Anyway, they're at this conference, and the theme of the conference is actually Robert Frost's work. If you can imagine how nerve-wracking that would be to give a paper on Robert Frost, and there he is sitting in the audience. So they were at this panel presentation together, and the person who was giving a paper was a student. She was pretty young. I can't remember what my professor said, but a young woman giving a presentation on one of Robert Frost's poems. Can you imagine standing up there in front of Robert Frost saying, "Yes, Robert Frost, this is what I think your poem means"? Would scare me to death. Anyway, so the panel was over, and at the end of these panels, there's usually a question and answer section. So the moderator gets up and says, "Are there any questions?" And Robert Frost raises his hand, and the moderator says, "Yes, Robert Frost, what's your question?" And he says, no, I don't really have a question. I have a comment to the young woman who presented her interpretation of one of my poems. He said, "I never thought of that poem that way before, but I think I will now." I love that story because I think a lot of people think, well, literature means whatever the author wanted it to mean. And that's not really true because, like all artists, their art may have different meaning to different people. When you create something, it can be more than the sum of its parts, more than what you initially meant it to be. And I think it's important to have an understanding of that if you're going to analyze literature. So this week we're talking about fiction. I love fiction. I think I can tell from your introductions that a lot of you do as well. So discussion board, reading journal, quiz. Remember, the quiz is open book, but this quiz is going to be a lot more detailed and not quite as easy as the first quiz was because I'm expecting that you have your book now. Please remember that the last day to do weekly assignments is technically Saturday because that's the last day of the week, but I always give you a one-day grace period, so you really have until Sunday night to complete them. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns about the course, if something's not going well, if I've done something wrong to your grade, for example, please do not hesitate. Send me an email, let me know, and I will get back to you just as soon as possible. All right, everybody, I'm working on grading the entries for the reading journals for week 1 and getting discussion forum post grades up. Remember that I don't reply. I'm sorry, I wish I could. I don't reply to everyone's discussion forum posts. I do read them. And I encourage you to read what other people are saying, to read what I've commented on other people's posts if I didn't comment on yours. And feel free to email me, like I said. Several of you have asked when we are going to talk in more depth about your own critical analysis paper. That's coming, I promise. There's going to be a reading journal activity possibly as soon as next week. I think it's a discussion forum post, actually, that's going to get you started thinking about topics for a potential paper. Because before you know it, the way the summer goes, this course will be done. We're already at the end of this week, a quarter of the way through. Okay, I will stop talking now. Have a wonderful week. Email me with any questions. Bye.